Hey, good evening. Good evening, everybody. Let me get this stuff all squared away here, get the show ready to go. Hope everybody's having a good week so far. Let me check audio, make sure we got good audio. All right. So happy Tuesday. Another show, episode 73. I cannot believe it. Hey, Chris, how you doing, man? Got in early tonight. So, for everybody that's been coming to the shows, Chris has been out running his car. Hey, Mike, how you doing, man? Chris has been out driving his car around, and I believe it's up at Pro's getting the new accessory drive put in so that the supercharger stops slipping. So, be really fun to have that thing out and about here shortly. So, couple things. Hey, Kenny, how you doing, man? So, couple things we're going around this week. Finally got the Smurf engine picked up and sent up to the machine shop. I got back to work on the Buick T-Type, doing the brake upgrade, which kind of led me to the tech stuff for tonight. In fact, the thumbnail was machining a part for the Buick, so hopefully this will be interesting. Went down Saturday to Bobby's in Boca. He's got Kim and Dave's Chevelle down there, and he's got the hood already buffed, wet sanded and buffed, and he was working on the roof and the deck lid. Made some alignment adjustments to the let me turn this phone off, sorry about that. Made adjustments to the doors and stuff, getting all that stuff all worked out. In fact, it was kind of funny. You said the issue with the hood was Dave had gotten a billet hood release for it, hood latch assembly, and the machining of the pin was a little bit oversized, and it was like they left the machining marks in the pin, so it was dragging going into the latch. That's why we couldn't get the hood to latch completely. So that's all straightened out now. The hood shuts. So next time we get a road test video on that car, the hood will be shut this time. It should make some of the viewers happy. I did get a couple of remarks about that, but I'm working on the t-shirts. They look like they're working good. We washed them a couple times, and the size seems to be staying pretty good. And I'm working on getting a store activated. So hopefully within the next week or so, we should be able to have the first shirts out available for purchase, and we'll start working on future designs. Got that. Worked on Joe's car some more. It's just about finished, wrapped up. Although he called, and now he wants a core support cover that comes off. Hey, Ryan, how you doing? He wants a core support cover on the front of the car, so I'll try to knock out a template for that over the weekend. Went to a car show with the NASCAR on Saturday night. Again, got a lot of reviews and a lot of people looking at the car and checking out and loving it and stuff. And at Show Car Gene's show, it was in not sure what the shopping center is, but it's where Rosalita's is in off Lantana Road for the local people. The DJ had me, he moved some cars around and had me move right up next to the DJ stand, so it was right out front and everybody. So that was pretty fun. And we did get a confirmation that there's going to be a replacement for the Brass Monkey shows on that we were having the first Friday of the month. That show got shut down, and they're going to do another one up off of Southern Boulevard. So it'll be the first Friday nights. So that'll be good. Get some more stuff out there, and then I think this Saturday night, although I haven't talked to the wife about it yet, but I would like to go down to Packy's in Boca this Saturday night with the Cup car. So that's about all with that. I haven't gotten a chance to work on peeling the vinyl off the roof yet. Maybe I might do that on Saturday. See what we got going on in the shop in Saturday, and trying to think if there was anything else. I went down to Deerfield and got a grudge car ready for No Guts, No Glory in Orlando this weekend. I had a bent shock sensor on it, straightened that out, bled the brakes, and had to wire up a neutral safety switch. So that's all done. That was pretty much it for the week. So I guess we'll go ahead and start the tech portion tonight. So all right. Oh, and I didn't tell you guys. Hopefully, we aren't going to have any drop issues tonight. I purchased a new laptop for my tuning stuff, and the IT guy that came over to help me set it up was like, "Man, your speed and your Wi-Fi speed is terrible." So we did a test, and sure enough, it was pretty bad. So we ran a hard line into the router into the house and made the speeds much better. So hopefully that cures that issue. So we'll see. I see. I do have 1% drop frame, so I still could have some issues with the RAM in my computer tower, but I got so many things open on in the software. Let me shut this one program down. He said that thing eats a lot of power. And see what that does. Try to get it closed up here. Sorry about that. I should have had some of this stuff closed up before. Let's see if that helps out. So anyway, so let me go ahead and drop down to the desktop here. So here's the Buick T-Type I'm working on. I'm going to put a Holley HP computer and a 6.86 screen and stuff like that. But my buddy Dick actually asked me to go ahead and put this brake conversion kit on. So let me. So the brake conversion kit is 2015 Camaro SS brakes. So they're 14-inch rotors with the Brembo 4-piston calipers. So the front of his car already had S10 spindles on it, so it was a fairly simple job. I didn't get a chance to get pictures when I was doing that, but just had to cut a couple ears off. There's the front. Car's got 17-inch wheels on it, and that brake rotor fills that 17-inch wheel up pretty good. But so the front was pretty simple. I mean, just like any other type of brake job you're doing. Hey, John, how you doing? You know, if you're doing a Willwood or anything, a lot of those you have to cut the factory ears off on the GM spindle, because the GM spindle actually mounts the caliper and lines up the pad. So they show you how to cut it off. It's pretty simple, straightforward. But the rear brakes, however, was a whole different ballgame. So this car still has the G-body rear end in it. And on the G-body, you notice there's 2 screws on the bottom of the backing plate, and the wheel cylinder goes through, and then the top anchor pin bolts through this bracket. Unfortunately, the next picture is kind of blurry, but there's the end of the axle housing. So completely different than what you'd normally see. Normally you'd see 4 bolts up here on the flange, and the backing plate would bolt through that. But on these G bodies and some of the F bodies, they use this oddball deal. So they said right at the bottom of the wheel cylinder hole, you cut that arm off, you cut that plate off like that. Again, sorry for the blurry picture. And then you take the Camaro backing plate. Now, again, this is for a 14-inch rotor. And you bolt it on. Now, you notice it's got 4 bolts like a normal flange does. So, it wasn't terrible. You know, the instructions are stuff off the internet. And they're like, oh, you just, clamp it down and kind of, take a hammer and bump it around till you get it squared. And I'm thinking, how can you do that when you got an e-brake that's going to ride in the hub of the drum, of the hub of the rotor? It has to be pretty much spot on, or you're going to have drag issues and stuff like that. So I went in and stuck it up there, and you're supposed to line it up and drill holes. And you can see that there's quite a bit of gap. So there's no real way of centering this thing because this piece is set in. You can't get like a caliper or anything in there to center it. So I'm like, what the heck? We got to figure out something to do this thing. There's another picture of it. You can see how much gap there was. So I thought, you know what I need? I need a spacer. That's what I need. I need to put a spacer in there. So what I went ahead and did was I went through my scrap pile and I found this ring and put it up in actually that picture was in front of the other one. This is the first picture. So this is just a piece of scrap I had laying around. I got a bunch of plastic totes that I throw scrap in because you never know when you need a piece. Luckily I have a lathe and a mill, but I went ahead and measured everything up and started machining the ID. And then once I had the ID machined, then I went ahead and machined the OD. There's another picture just getting it started. And there's the piece when we were all finished. So then I was able to take that piece and slide it over the hub, the axle tube support where the bearing rides. That's another bad picture. Sorry about that. There's a better one. And so was able to get that on there. And then slide the backing plate up over top of that piece, and now the backing plate within a couple thousandths is square to the center line of the axle housing. And now I can go ahead and clamp it, and I can drill my 4 holes and mount it up, and do the same thing to the other side. Then I can go ahead and finish the brake portion of this job up. But it just got me thinking while I was doing this that, this is something we run into building hot rods all the time because, we're mix matching parts, using parts from different models or different makes. So you're always running across these issues. Now, obviously, common things like engine swap kits, typically you can buy a motor mount kit to put one engine into a different car if they're both fairly popular. But some of the stuff, there isn't, it's not out there. Or if it is out there, it may be something that is a week or two away, or it's expensive to buy. And, so it makes it complicated. So what I've learned over these years is whenever I run into something like that, I kind of step back, take a moment, and try to come up with an idea that is going to allow me to get where I need to go. As in this piece, I knew I needed to have that centered to the axle housing. I knew that even though that outer axle tube was a little rusty, I filed it and sanded it and got it pretty clean. So I knew it was fairly close. And truthfully, there is a couple thousandths of, probably there's probably about 30, 40 thousandths adjustability in the brake shoes and stuff in that. But you don't want to push that issue and not have it as square as you want, because you're going to have a bad outcome. Once you drill those 4 holes in that flange, you're done. You're not going to be able to move it very much. And if you waller out the holes, then things can get loose and get sloppy. So it just doesn't work very good. So that's what I've learned over the years, is to go ahead and try to come up with a solution, and with that solution, then you can, perform the task at hand and have a good outcome. So a lot of times when you're working on cars, especially when I was working in a fleet shop, I'm sure Mike can attest to this. You get cars that you can't. You wonder how the engineers put these things together, because there's no way it's easy to get stuff off. We used to have. Let me pull up some more pictures here. Let's see. This one's good. So, working on some of the late model cars, they got power steering hoses and stuff that you can't get to, and you're supposed to change, especially when you're working as a tech in a shop. You want to change a power steering pump, and they tell you, it's 0.8 hours. 0.8 of an hour to change it. That's what the job calls for. It's what they're going to want to pay. And you look, you go under the hood, and you can't even get to any of the bolts to take the thing apart. So that's when I come up with stuff like these wrenches here. There's a 5/8. It's bent, so I could get in to get underneath of a flange or something, and then you could take another wrench and go into the box, and you could turn it like get leverage to make it rotate. So that's what I've done over the year. These are a bunch of tools that I have sitting in my box. Unfortunately, this was a Snap one that was kind of an expensive one. Mike says it's worse working on new stuff at the dealer. There's a lot of WTF are they thinking moments. Absolutely. These three wrenches here are for Ford 4.6 modular engine power steering pump high pressure hoses. Believe it or not, to get the high pressure hose off without disassembling the entire car, you have to use these. I had to make these wrenches, and the two lower ones kind of look like they're the same, but they're actually a different depth, because unfortunately you can only get about a half a flat rotation at a time. So you have to use one wrench for a half a flat, then use the other wrench for the other half a flat, and so on until you can get the component off. Here you can kind of see the different depth, and there's a little slight angle difference, and then of course this one's got a completely different angle. So you guys might not be working in a fleet shop or in a dealership and not working on stuff, but what I wanted to show you is when you have an issue where you can't get a wrench or a socket or something, you need to get something apart, you have to try to come up with some ideas. Ryan says, I just had that same thought today. 5 minutes alone with an engineer is all I want. We've all had those thoughts. Trust me. Yeah, I mean, because whether you're working on a new car or an old car, engineers were involved with it. And obviously, I mean, really, old cars, 50s and 60s cars and farther back, there's a lot more space in them. But even when you start doing engine swaps, I mean, put a big block engine in a Vega chassis or a H-body chassis, and next thing you know, you have no room for anything. So, it doesn't matter what you're working on. You can run into times like these where you need to create something. And these wrenches and stuff were really easy to do. That was all done with a torch and a vise. So, and the cool thing is, you try it, and if it don't work, well, you heat it and bend it some more. Once you have it cherry red, you can make it in any shape you want. So a little trial and error, and next thing you know, you got a wrench that'll do the job for you and help you out tremendously. Here's some other different wrenches I had to make over the years. This 7/16 to get some injector nozzles out of on a race engine. We had on an blown alcohol engine, we had fuel jets in the cylinder head going into the intake runner, and so you had to work around the push rods and the rocker arms and all that stuff. So you have to come up with these different style wrenches. I didn't get a different angle, but this is a high stepped 7/16. So that's a really good wrench for header bolts, because you got a big step so you can get around where the header might bend as it comes out of the exhaust port. And here's another style wrench that was machined flat, so it's very thin to get into between two fittings. Like you have a fitting against a block and a fitting nut that tightens up against it, and you start taking the nut off the tube, and the inner nut starts rotating against the engine block. Well, now you can't get anything apart because it's still tight, and it's going to start bending the line. So you could use this wrench here, tighten that piece back up and hold it, and then break the nut loose. So just little things like that. You never know when you're going to come across something like that, but very, very useful to have the ability to make stuff like this. And like Harbor Freight or some of your other lower line tools, they're great for doing this stuff. You know, your Huskies and Craftsman, stuff like that. Cobalt, they're still a decent wrench, but they're cheap and inexpensive if you have to modify it. Unfortunately, at times when I was working in a fleet shop, I'd modify Snap-on wrenches or Matco wrenches, which were very expensive to do, but you know, you got to get the job done, so you do what you have to do. Unfortunately, I lost the other half of this wrench. This was a 9/16 5/8 combination wrench, and the 5/8 side was made just like this 9/16 one for common spark plugs. The 9/16 is also for some of your later model cars that have the 9/16 spark plugs. And there's a little another wrench getting a distributor bolt loose. You can see I had to grind this one down kind of almost to a point to get it in between two components, and then you could use the handle part. You could either smack it with a small hammer or something like that to get it to break loose, and then you could. And says, "I love this. I have several of these. Great topic. Thank you." Yeah, it's so we're still getting some buffering here. Yeah, I gotta see what's going on with the computer. But here's one. I had to get a bolt out of a chassis, and the engine was right down on top of it, and there was no way with a long extension from the top or from the bottom with a wrench, because it was inside of a pocket, but I could get a socket on it. So I made this little tool, and you can see there's the socket, and it had a little arm, so that way you could hold on to it, pull the socket back out, and reclock it, whatever you had to do. So it's just simple things like that. Again, you just have to kind of think about what you're working on, what it's going to take to get in there, and then go through your toolbox and see what you got laying around, extras and stuff like that, to kind of make a tool so you can get it done. And of course, if you're doing it for your own car, now you've got a tool that's going to work forever. So that's always been really handy. Some of the other stuff we got, here's some stuff for working on rear ends, but it's still, and it follows through for any kind of anything you're working on. But you got sockets that don't fit, especially like in a differential yoke. In fact, this deep well one here I just used on that Buick when I rebuilt the rear end. So on the GM yokes, they have a 1.25 inch pinion nut, but you can't get a regular socket down in there because it's so thin. And if you use a chrome socket, especially like a 12 point or something, this is going to split because you have to tighten the pinion bolt so tight. So again, I just chuck these up in the lathe and cut them down. These are all for different pinion yokes that I've worked on over the years. Some of these 1.5 inches, and that's 1 5/8 for some of these big race car 1350s on a 35 spline 9-inch. So you just have to, just be creative. Here's one. We had a floater rear end in the Pro Mod, and it was a strange rear end, and the floater rear ends are kind of like a big truck rear end, where it's got an inner and outer wheel bearing, and then it's got a spanner nut that holds, that spins on, that holds it together, just like your typical front hub assembly. And it had a 4-point, 4-notch, smooth nut in it. So we looked everywhere. We called around. Nobody had a socket that would fit. Strange, I think, makes them, but they didn't have any in stock, and we wanted to get the car fixed for the next race. So I took a 2-inch socket, put it in the milling machine, and then milled the material off until I had my 4 notches at the right diameter and the right thickness, and I was able to get the race car fixed. So those are the kind of things. Here's a unique tool. I didn't actually make this one, but this is you can buy this off of eBay. You just go on eBay and put Hydro Boost lock nut tool or lock nut removal tool, and there's a guy that makes this kit. It's not assembled like that. It comes disassembled. You have to weld the 2 pieces together. But if you're working with Hydro Boost, this is awesome, because this will slide right over the brake shaft, will go right through it, and these 4 teeth will go right down inside and grab that nut, and you can break it loose, take it out, and then put a correct adapter to bolt the Hydro Boost into your car, instead of using the plates that come from, if you get one from a junkyard or something, and they're, kind of chintzy looking. A lot of companies now make billet mounting brackets. My buddies up at Pros Tuning in Riviera Beach, they've got most of the GM cars, and they're working on some Ford's product now, where they've got the bracket made. It's got the right angle, it's got the right depth, so that you can put a Hydro Boost into your, A body, B body, X body, F body. I've got one coming for an OBS Chevy pickup, so they've got a bunch of different ones, and works real well. You can buy that. I don't remember how much this piece was. It might have been like $25 or something, and then you just take the 1/2-inch drive portion and weld it to the tube, and you've got a Hydro Boost tool. And then working on differentials, since we're in differentials and stuff, this is a tool that I had cut. You can get these ones like this. Got different patterns for different size yokes for different size U-joints, and then you got a 1/2 and a 3/4 drive hole for holding onto it. I've also seen them where somebody will take a bar stock and weld it to it, and that way, if you only have one ratchet, you can deal with it. But that's really helpful when you're doing differential work, because your your pinion will usually use a crush sleeve, and the crush sleeve are very, very hard to get crushed to the right load, the right drag on your tapered bearings. Back in the day, I used to put them in a press, but if you went one pump too far, to throw the crush sleeve was then garbage, and you had to throw it out and get another one. Or if you got lucky, you might better find a shim to take up the slack. But this is a much easier way to do it, and then you can put your socket through here with a long ratchet, and you can pull it in nice and snug. And then if you're working on a high performance differential or a race differential, they don't use crush sleeves. They actually use a solid spacer with a shim stack, and you have to torque those to 250 foot-pounds. So again, this is very helpful for holding on to that pinion, so you can use the torque wrench to pull that bolt tight. So just another tool. You don't have to buy these. You can just take your yoke and center punch 2 holes in it and drill a hole in the middle, and make it out of a piece of flat stock. So I'm just trying to show you ideas of things that you can make in your shop while you're working on stuff, and get some tools, and get through that job that you're working on. And again, if it's something you do a lot of, it's something you can keep in the toolbox and use for future things. So here's a couple Here's some engine diagnostic tools that I've made over years. Well, it's only one picture. I thought I'd put more in there. So I had a small block Chevy and kept losing coolant. We pressure tested this thing, couldn't find a leak. Then we used the I showed you guys in the coolant video, in the coolant live show, that there's a product that you can put in the fluid in, and then bring the air, suck the air off the top of the radiator to look for combustion chamber gases to see if you have a bad head gasket. Did that to this thing 2-3 times. Every time came up solid blue, just like it's supposed to, no head gasket leak. But yet we're still losing coolant. Then after we had pressure tested it enough times and had to keep refilling the radiator, we realized that the oil level was coming up in the engine. So obviously the coolant is leaking inside the engine. So next thing we did was pull the intake to take a look inside there. Well, now we're like, well, was it intake gasket? We're kind of was thinking maybe, like your Vortec Chevy V8 engines from the late 90s had a neoprene with hard plastic intake gaskets, and they would rot. And that was a big issue with those. So once you took the intake off, well, now you can't pressure test it anymore. And the intake gasket on this particular engine looked fine. So what we did was we made these plates, bolted them over top of the intake crossovers going into the cylinder head. And now we took the upper hose and put a plug in the upper hose, because now it used to go to the thermostat housing. So now there's no thermostat housing. So we capped it off there, and then we were able to pressure test the engine with the intake off. And lo and behold, we found a crack in the engine valley, and the car needed a new engine block. But because we were able to make these simple tools, we were able to diagnose it and know that we had found the correct issue. So again, it's one of those things that you want to. Oh, I didn't show you the picture. I'm sorry. There's the spacers, and actually you can kind of even see the imprint of the intake gaskets. But I've ended up using these a number of times when we're hunting for coolant leaks. This happens to be for a small block Chevy, but you can make these for whatever you're working on. Just get your bolt pattern over top of your the four corners of the intake, wherever to the intake to the cylinder head, wherever the coolant passes through, and close it off. Then you can pressure test your engine block. So that was just, again, have an issue, trying to think of how can we solve this. You stop, think about it for a couple minutes, say, well, if we had the intake off, we could see what's going on inside, but if we have the intake off, now we can't pressure test it. So do we pull it off, and what do we do? So this was just a good way of testing that. So a couple other things here. Let's see. Here's an easy one that a lot of people could use. So you pull and this goes for any engine. It doesn't matter what you're working on, but you pull your engine out of the car and it's automatic transmission, and you need to move the car, or you need to you need to trailer it somewhere or something else. Well, if you don't lock the torque converter into the transmission, it's going to fall out. I've actually seen not anything that I was towing, but I've actually seen a guy towing a car to back home. I guess they took the engine out at a buddy shop where they had a engine hoist, and then he was taking the car back home, and the torque converter fell out in the middle of the road. It was on an open trailer, and it was an open deck. So when it slid out, it just fell right on the ground. So if it was a stock torque converter, it's about a $200 repair. If it was a performance torque converter, it could be a $1,800 mess up on some of these high-end drag cars. We've shown in our torque converter live show that some of these racing torque converters can be $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. So this is a very simple piece of 1-inch flat stock that you can bend, and you catch one of the ears on the bell housing where the engine would bolt to it, and it locks the converter in. That's all, so your bell housing would be here, and it's tipped in so that it holds the torque converter in place. It takes a whole 5 seconds in a vise, a 3/8 drill bit, and about $2 worth of flat stock. And you've got a tool that will hold the torque converter in forever. I've got a bunch of these, so if I pull a transmission out of a car and I put it on a dolly and put it in storage or whatever, put this on there, you don't have to worry about the converter falling out and dumping trans fluid all over the shop. Just a real simple thing. And actually, if you get some reman transmissions, a lot of them will come with that bracket in, or you don't even have to build it. You can just get it from the engine crate. But real handy to have. Another thing that all of us will undoubtedly run into is changing spark plugs in your car with headers. So that can be a real nightmare. So let me show you some of the stuff I've done for that. And I got some stuff I can show you that you can actually purchase that are really good too. As soon as this picture opens up. For some reason the computer is slow. So that must be my other situation with the buffering, is that my tower's not up to speed. All right, it doesn't seem to be wanting to work. All right, there we go. So I'm sure all of you guys have changed spark plugs on cars with headers in there, and you can't get to the spark plugs to say, it's just impossible. So here's some of the tools that I've made in the past. This is a 5/8 rather, and there's the standard 5/8 socket you would buy from any parts store or tool truck. Well, back in the day, especially on the Mustang small blocks, the 302s and the 351 Windsors, a lot of the, especially on the aftermarket heads, the head exhaust ports were moved into a different position. So you would have your, back in the day, JBA or Mac header, and they would have the flanges on there, and then you would get a racing cylinder head. Well, now the flange is impeding in the spark plug area. So we'd machine this down, and actually that was done so long ago. I actually did that with a hand grinder. Didn't even do it with or a bench grinder. Didn't even do it in the lathe. But that was so you made enough clearance to get around the header flange to get down into the cylinder head to grab the spark plug and pull it out. And here's a 13/16 unit with a standard one next to it. This one was actually for a big block Ford drag car, and again, you couldn't get in there to get the header flanges and stuff were in the way. So you could get this in there. The spark plug would actually come through the top of this, but you could get an open end wrench to break it loose and then turn it out by hand. So just again, things you changing spark plugs and you're like, there's got to be a better way. Well, think about it, take some measurements, and you probably come up with something. Just a different angle. You can see here I had to radius the point because the way the cylinder head was machined, it couldn't put anything thick down inside there to grab the hex of the spark plug. Here's a 5/8. This was primarily used on a small block Chevy, but again, so you have your small block Chevy and you have your long tube headers, and your long tube headers are either poorly made or the headers are for straight plug and you've got angle plug heads, or vice versa. You got angle plug headers with straight plugs, and you can't get in there to get to the spark plug any way possible. The spark plug is, the tip of it's real close to the header tube. One of those that melts the spark plug boots all the time. You end up having to dent them. So I made this wrench so you could get down underneath and work your way into the hex of the spark plug. and you see I had to narrow the socket down because there's only a small recess between the head bolts to get in there. So this was a flat tool. Then I had that couple slides earlier, I had that offset one that you would also work in there. But again, it's just one of those, you got a problem child, try coming up with some solutions and make your life a lot easier. One of the things you can purchase, these are from Powerhouse Products, which is a division of Comp Cams. And these are spark plug sockets. You can see they've got a big notch in them. And you can actually come in at an angle and get over the porcelain and slide it in. And the porcelain on this one will come through. The porcelain will about be flush with this one. And then you can use a 5/8 wrench, which again, that's the hex size of the spark plug. And then you can break them loose and then turn them out by hand. There was a third one that I have since lost, but that one actually had a square in the end of it. So the socket's necked way down, but you could still get an extension, which is very narrow, and you can get around some header tubes and stuff. But these three, not the stock one, but these two shorties and this one modified are my go-to spark plug sockets for big block and small block Chevrolets and Fords. I use these on a daily basis. So, I get a friend's car, Scott's Vegas with one. He tried to put spark plugs in himself. He could only get 4 out with what he had, regular tools that he had in his house. And he had to bring the car over to me, and I went ahead and used my tools and was able to get the rest of it out. So once we figured out which sockets worked the best, then he was able to replicate them, or actually he purchased one of these, and now he's got a tool to get the spark plugs out. And what could have taken 3 or 4 hours unbolting the header to get it loose so you can get to the spark plugs now takes about 30 minutes, and you can change all the plugs in the thing. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's doable. That's the main thing. It's doable. And here's something I make for working on the race cars. And all it is a 5/8 socket with a universal. And then I take 3/8 DOM tubing and I weld it into the hex and I put a handle on it. And so now this one's actually for the Smurf. When the car's up on the jacks, we can run that in there, get it, and spin the spark plugs in and out very fast since we change them every run. And I made this T handle about 8 inches long, so that is short, so that if I have somebody helping me, I don't have to worry about them over tightening the spark plugs or doing anything crazy, because you can only get so much torque out of this thin tube with that 8-inch, 4-inch per side leverage. So even if you use both hands, you can't damage the threads on the cylinder head. So real handy. Obviously, you can't use that on most vehicles because the fenders are in the way. But you could use a shorter version on some vehicles, make them easy to change spark plugs. If you got a car that's got a front end that's removable or a tilt front end, it would work fine. And then again on the Smurf car, this is another piece that I made. This is for doing the valve cover bolts because we want to take the valve covers off to adjust the valves every couple 4 or 5 passes. So again, just a 7/16 socket with a universal and then a short bar. I don't remember actually where I got this crossbar. It may have been originally like a motorcycle tool or something. I got it on an auction or something, but it's got little barbell ends on it so you can actually hold the shaft and spin it. Hey Jeff, how you doing? Thanks for watching. Here's another tool. You can buy these, a piston stop, but if you got some old spark plugs in the shop, why go out and buy something? So I just break all the porcelain out of it, cut the strap out, run a tap down the center, and put a bolt in it. Now I've got a piston stop for when I'm setting my degree wheel up. And I can make these, out of whatever, because a lot of your cylinder heads are going to take different reach and different design, whether it's a taper seat or a washer gasket. So I can make those for all different ones. Working on Leo's 4200, that car has 900 thousandths of a spark plug thread reach. So obviously this probably wouldn't even grab in there. So something very simple, if you're trying to set up a degree wheel, or you got an engine that you can't break something loose and you want to try to use a piston stop to do it, there you go. Very easy to make. So I hope this is giving you guys some ideas of different things. Maybe you've had a situation, something you're working on, and man, you just pulled your hair out trying to figure out how we're going to work on this thing. It's just one of those things that you just have to kind of think outside the box for a minute. Sit down and think about it. Maybe even draw up a little picture or something. But once you get your idea, then you can go ahead and get the torch out, grab a tool or a piece of scrap steel or something, and go to work and find get what you need to make it all happen. I went back too far. Let me see what we got next here. Here's some pretty cool things. So I do a lot of wheel alignments for my buddies at Pros, the guys that make the Hydro Boost brackets, and I use their dynos sometimes and stuff like that. So they do a lot of big wheel cars, a lot of donks and cars with 24s and 26s and even 28s and 30s. So I go up to my old my buddy Doug's shop, DNR, and I'll do the alignment there because he's got a nice Hunter machine. And on the Hunter machines, they got these rim clamps. They grab the inside edges of the rim, and it holds the reflector that's what the computer reads to give you your camber, caster, toe, etc. The problem is these rim clamps will stretch out to about a 24-inch wheel. And when I started doing some of his alignments with 26s on them, I would cut little pieces of rubber hose to stick over there and kind of lay it in the rim. But the problem with that is a lot of these rims have coatings on them and stuff, and they're very expensive wheels, and the last thing you want to do is put a nick in the wheel or break the coating on them. So had to look for some different options. This was another option. It's actually like a outer wheel clamp, and then you can put the reflector head on there. The problem is, again, especially on the donks, they're the Chevy A bodies. They've got skirts on the back of them, and the car is tucked over the top of the wheel, so this piece won't fit between the fender and the tire. Same thing on a drag car that's got a big slick or something like that, and the car's really low to the ground. You can't get a conventional alignment head in there. It just isn't made to work that way. And when you talk to the alignment guys, they're like, well, you have to just do a two-wheel alignment then. And why am I using this big fancy machine if I can't get a good four-wheel alignment, get the thrust angles and all the others, the rear toe, because most of these cars all have adjustable rear suspension. That's what we do when we hot rod these things. We put tubular A-arm, lower and upper control arms, and all that stuff's adjustable, so then you have to adjust your toe and your thrust. So there's just another variant of how they do it. So I came up with these. Wait a minute, there's another variant. Oh, there they are. So I came up with this stuff. And this was actually, again, pretty easy to think about. Once I was thinking about it, I said, I need something that'll hold the alignment head perpendicular to the wheel, but I need it to be able to reach in and be small in diameter so I don't have to take the skirts off. One of the things about a lot of these donks and stuff is when they have the side skirts on the car, they can't use the conventional clamping system because the tire is too close to all the mechanisms. So what they end up doing is they end up putting either nut certs, or they just use self tappers, and they run the skirt into the fender flange. So it's one of those things, when you take them apart, you don't know if you're going to get it back together, and just I'd rather not even have to touch any of that. It makes my time on the alignment machine much faster if I don't have to mess with any of that. So I came out with these. These are just a piece of 3/16 plate with my buddies over at Pros. They use their plasma table, and they put a center hole, and then they put 10 holes on the outer ring. So there's a 5x5 bolt pattern and a 5x4 and 3/4 bolt pattern. And I just took aluminum turnbuckles like you would have for, any kind of control arm or anything like that. These are 1/2-inch thread, so you got 1/2-inch fine thread on one side, and then I got these left-hand bolts on the other side. So I can take 3 of the bolts off the wheel. So 2 bolts, lug bolts, are still holding the wheel onto the car, and then I run my aluminum dowels in there, and then bolt the plates on the end, and I can put my alignment head on the end. So I use these deep ones for the back wheels, and I use these short ones for the front wheels, because the back wheels are usually deep dish, and I have different length arms, so I can go back and forth. So works out real sweet. I can get I don't have to disassemble the car. I don't have to worry about messing up the wheels, touching the coatings on the rims and stuff. So it works out real nice. There's just another angle. And nice thing is, you're not moving the car, so you can take the 3 lug nuts off and run these in, and it doesn't move the wheel from being square on the flange or anything like that. Works out real nice. I've seen something like this that was for sale. I think it was like $1,000, because it came with a bunch of different attachments and stuff like that. I only need it for GM cars, so this serves my purpose with the 5-on-5 and the 5-on-4 and 3/4. I have not run into yet. I'm going to make another set of these with for 5/8 thread for drag cars, and then another set with 7/16 for the cars that have the smaller lugs, smaller wheel studs. But so far, any of the cars I've done, they've had 1/2-inch stud. Your Willwood and your Bear brake kits all come with 1/2-inch studs anyways to upgrade. So pretty much everything I've had to do has already had the right hardware sizes in it. That is a really bad picture. See if I got another one. So there's, it's kind of dark and shadowy, but this is a plate I can use. You can buy these anywhere online and stuff, but again, it's something I just whipped out one day when we were working on stock cars. And if I do a drag car alignment at the shop, I can use these. So I got 2 of these. I'm going to run a tape measure across and use a spring clamp to grab the one side of the tape measure, and then the other side I run the measure through. It's very easy to pull them taut and read the edge, and you can tell exactly what your toe is, the differential from front to rear. That's if the front is smaller, it's towed in. If the front is larger, it's towed out. Real simple to use. There's the plate on the ground. You see I got some masking tape up on the top, or painter's tape, so it won't scratch the wheel if it touches the wheel. Just really easy to do, and this is basically doing the same thing. This is one of these kits that you can buy, but this kit is $150, where I just got some scrap from the aluminum, from the metal scrap place. I think I paid $20 for those 2 plates, and I got 2 tape measures, were $5 a piece at Home Depot, and I got my toe gauge. So again, it's one of those things that necessity creates the opportunity to build something that you can use to make it happen. So again, my main takeaway for you guys on this is, if you got a situation that's sticky and you don't know what you're going to do, sit back and think about it and come up with a solution. Some of them are very, very simple. Here's a real simple one I did. I made this a bunch of years ago. In fact, Kenny may have even used this at one time. Let's see here. Get the picture to open. So back in the day, when we're working on the dyno, or you're doing a little road test by yourself and you got the laptop sitting in the passenger seat, it doesn't want to sit there very good because your seat's always got, it's angled so that the bolster gives you support under your thighs, and your rear end is much lower. So I just took a piece of scrap aluminum in the shop and bent it, broke the two edges. So it's got like a 2.5 inch break on this side with a little flat to sit against the upholstery of the car. And there it's in use. And the laptop sits level and square, so it makes it easy to see while you're operating the dyno, or if you're road testing, you want to do a data log or something, you don't have to take your eye off the road. You can just hit the enter button and get it to data log, and then when you're ready to make some adjustment, you can just pull off to the side of the road, and the laptop's sitting there nice and pretty and very easy to do. In fact, this unit has even been down the quarter mile before, because in the old Excel DFI computers, they didn't do internal data logging, so you'd have to have your laptop to do a data log. So I would turn the screen against the backrest of the chair and put a seatbelt on it, and we could make a quarter mile pass or eighth mile pass and data log the run, and then go back in the pits and be able to look at the data log. So it's just one of those things I wanted you guys just to see. Try not to get crazy fighting with stuff while you're working on your car. That's the last thing you want to do, is get aggravated when you're trying to work on your hot rod or your project car or even your daily driver. When you got something fighting with you, try to come up with a solution, and make a custom tool. Any of you guys that worked at dealerships, that the Snap-on and Matco, Cornwell, all the name brand tool companies, they'll have a bunch of different like distributor wrenches that were pre-bent to get around the distributor to change the timing. Back in the day when all cars had distributors, those guys would have those things in stock on the truck. Nowadays it's kind of hard to find. You got to look on eBay and stuff like that. But a common tool like that, you can buy them with them already made to do these intricate operations. Back in the day, the 6.2 and the 6.5 GM diesels, they had a injector pump, and you had to time. It was a mechanical injection, so you had to time it, and the screws were down inside the valley. So Snap-on made a custom wrench that had an S curve in it, so you could get down there, and it was bent just enough that you could get a whole flat turn on those nuts, so you could loosen them up and then put your timing tool on there and adjust the timing. And they make obviously they have double offset wrenches and crow feet and stuff like that, the common brand stuff. So your common stuff, you can purchase stuff without having to make it. But when you're working on your car that you've done engine swaps or body swaps, or you've got different kind of exhaust and headers and stuff on there, it's one of those things that sometimes you're going to have to make a tool. You're just not going to be able to buy a tool. I see Mike says, yeah, he's got his timing wrench. I still have mine too. I should have took a picture of it. But like I've got in my Snap-on timing box, I've got the El Cheapo 2-piece 9/16 on one side, 1/2 inch on the other side. It breaks apart. You can buy those in the parts store for doing timing adjustments, and those things are truly a piece of crap. I mean, whenever invariably you'll get a distributor that's tightened down hard, and by the time you put enough leverage on to get it to break loose, the thing comes apart, and if the center bushing falls down and you can't find it, well, you're screwed now, because the end of the wrench has a 3/8 box on the end of it, so 3/8 square, so you really can't do anything with them. So I have 9/16 and for GM, and I have a 1/2 inch for Ford, and I have a 9/16 for Mopar that are old snap-on wrenches I keep in the bottom of my timing light box just because I've got them. Why not use them? But those are things that you could purchase when you had to, because it was a common deal. But a lot of times on our own vehicles, like I said, when you, especially spark plugs and stuff like that, when you got these headers that are, out of the box headers, especially some of the cheaper made headers, because they made them for one pattern, and all you have to do is have an aftermarket cylinder head that has an exhaust port change or something like that, and now, or you got a tall deck versus a short deck, or there's all kinds of different scenarios that can cause issues. So it's just one of those things that don't be afraid to get your cutoff wheel and your MIG welder and your torch and go to making some tools and make your life a lot easier. And you keep it in the box. Next thing you got to do that job on your car, you got the tool. So just something I wanted to show you guys. This Buick was kind of, when I was reading the instructions on that Buick, and the guy's like, oh, I just clamped the backing plate to the rear end housing and kind of used a mallet and kept bumping it around until I got it where I thought it was center. I'm like, that's not the way to do a brake system, I mean, yeah, you could probably make it work, but, it's not the right way to do it. You probably never get the e-brake adjusted right. God forbid you get it all done and then you put the rotor on. Now the caliper's dragging on the OD of the rotor. There's all kinds of situations that could arise from that, from not doing it right. So by looking at it and go, wow, if I had something that would fit on the OD of the axle housing and fit the ID of the backing plate, I can make it fit perfectly. So, next thing you do is you grab a tape measure or a caliper, and a vernier caliper, and go to your stockpile, your junk bin, or your buckets of extra scrap steel from when you're fabricating stuff. I keep all that stuff. I got boxes of different size trinkets, if you will, and I use that stuff all the time. Old sway bar flat stock mounts for spline style sway bar. They're great. They're 3/8 steel or aluminum, and you can use them for spacers when you're trying to flatten some out to use the drill press. I mean, that scrap steel can come into so much usefulness down the road. You never know. Plus, you can always make a tab or a bracket or whatever you need to make. So, you want to try to keep a spot where you can keep all that stuff, hopefully in a dry area so it's not all rusty. And don't be afraid to create something. It just makes your life so much easier. And, sorry, closing up all my windows. So, just trying to make things work easier. A lot of times, especially when I'm working by myself, you'll find times where I'm tightening a bolt up underneath the trunk, for like a bracket for a fuel pump mount or something like that. And I've got a bunch of lead weights. And so I'll take 2 weights. I'll put one big weight on the surface and then lay the wrench over the bolt. And then I'll put another weight on top of it so that when I'm underneath and I'm tightening, the direction that the wrench would want to go to not allow me to tighten it, I put it against that weight. Then I can go underneath the car and I can carefully wind that bolt up until it's snug, and then I can go ahead and lock it down and do it by myself. It's one of the things when you're working by yourself, you got to come up with creative ways to be able to do stuff like that. Seat bolts and stuff like that, blocks of lead or steel weights and stuff like that is so useful for that stuff like that. Where something's got to be held, but you can't you can't reach it around whatever you're working on. So you can put a stack of weight and prop a wrench or something in there, and then so you can get to the other side and manipulate it. So just you just have to be creative. Stop and think about it before you get too frustrated. Once you get frustrated, you're never going to be able to see straight enough to figure it out. So, but hopefully that gives you guys some thinking. When you're working on your car, you may come into this issue and remember, hey, I remember that live show George did that gave a bunch of great clues. Kind of same. Mike says, if you swap a Vortec 5.7 into my TBI Suburban, if I swap, I'm sorry, am I going to have tuning issues because the Vortec has a roller cam? I found a TBI intake with Vortec heads. No, that should be no problem at all. Especially if you're going to, if your camshaft has basically the same vacuum signals, so I'm thinking your Suburban is a OBD1 unit, and it probably didn't have the as long as the engine is fairly stock and your vacuum readings are about the same, you're not going to have too much issues with tuning. If you have to tune it, that can become a little bit of a problem. I don't know if the guy's website's still on there. Used to be a website called TunerCat, and that was K-A-T, TunerCat. And he had software and stuff where you could flash EEPROMs. OBD1 and the Vortec is stock, just freshening up. Yeah, you're not going to have any issues with that. You could, one thing you could do, if it's running a little rich or a little lean, you could put a wideband monitor in there, one of the Innovates or Daytona signals, Daytona sensors. There's a couple other brands. As long as they put out a analog narrowband voltage output, that works really well because, Mike, you remember on your and anybody that's watched the live shows when we were talking about sensors and stuff, your analog narrowband sensor is only made to read 14.7. So from like 14.3 to like 15.2 or something like that, I forget the exact numbers, the sensor is going to tell the computer it's 14.7. And if it gets richer or leaner, it just says rich or lean. The computer has no idea of how rich or how lean. But when you run a analog input from a wideband output, from a wideband sensor, the wideband sensor is going to have that accurate reading, and it's going to translate the data into a information that the ECU will read. And a lot of times you can get a little bit better fine tuning with the short and long term trim with that. And of course, if anytime you have all the time running rich or all the time running lean, you can always manipulate fuel pressure to cure that. Your car is running, your most of your stock OEM systems are running old school OBD1 stuff is going to be running 43.5, 44, 45 PSI. So if the engine is running rich all the time, you can lower the fuel pressure 2, 3, 5, 8 pounds, whatever it takes, until you get it back in the window that it needs. And vice versa. If it's running lean, you can raise the fuel pressure to get more fuel in. That will work when the vehicle is running rich all the time or lean all the time. Now, if you have rich and lean spots, that's when you get into problems. But you can still monitor your trim, and as long as the trim is still within your window, you can still manipulate the fuel pressure a little bit and kind of get it happy. But you just got to kind of play with it. Mike says, or maybe just a Holley 1850 carbon HEI unit. Yeah, that's definitely an easy way to do it. Or a Sniper, if you want to spend a little bit more money and you want to stay fuel injected. That should work fine. The OBD1 system all worked off of map sensors on the GM products. So as long as your vacuum signals are fairly close, it's going to be pretty good. The only time you get into problems is when you start going to an aftermarket camshaft and the vacuum signal changes. Instead of having that nice 12 to 18 inches of vacuum at idle, it drops down in below 10. You're gonna have to tune the engine. There's just no way around it. So at that point, you're gonna probably have to go with a carburetor. Mike says, I do eventually want to go to Holley EFI, but that's down the road. Yeah, well, I mean, you could definitely do a carburetor. Pick up a carburetor and intake fairly cheap. And if you put a carb intake on it, you put a 4150 style intake manifold on there, or even the Quadrajet style. Holley does make Sniper, which is a good base unit, or even in the Terminator Stealth, where you could get a better ECU and put that right on your stock manifold. So you'd still be able to use your same carburetor style manifold. So it wouldn't be a huge undertaking to convert it. And of course, with either one of those systems, you could always, if you're doing it in stages, you could always do fuel only for a while and leave your mechanical advanced distributor in there. And then later on, go to computer controlled timing. So you could do it in steps, which would make it very affordable. So, I mean, and, when you're, I've done it a bunch of times when you're running the TBI manifold, the GM TBIs, I think ran at like 18 PSI or something like that. But even if it was a 43 PSI system, you can put a fuel regulator, a bypass fuel regulator on there, and put your inlet on one side of the reg and your outlet, your return, into the base of the regulator, and then the other inlet would go to your carburetor, and you could adjust that fuel pressure down to 6 PSI, so you can leave your in-tank pump, you can use that nice sock and all that stuff that's already in there, all the fuel lines that are already in the vehicle, and still run your carburetor. So, I mean, I've done that many a times back in the day, and it works great, and that way you don't have to worry about dropping a tank and, making a pickup tube and all that stuff. You can just, put that bypass regulator in there and adapt it in, and you're good to go. So, all good things to think about. Think about it over the week, and if you come up with a clever tool that you've made, go back and leave it in the comments. Let me know what clever tool you made. I'm sure you've all have made something over the course of time. So I think it's a little after 8, so I guess we're gonna go ahead and pull the plug on tonight's show. I hope it was entertaining and you guys got some information out of it. If you got any questions about any of this stuff I did, shoot me an email, leave it in the comments, whatever you want to do. Remember, smash the like button. It's working great. The algorithm is picking up. We are right now at 224,000 views on the channel. So almost 250,000 views on the channel. So as we keep mashing that like button, the algorithm is sending it out to more people that are looking at automotive product or automotive content. So remember, hit the like button. I mean, the subscribe button. Ring the bell if you want to get instant notifications when I drop stuff. I am going to definitely work on getting some content on it. I know we've only been doing the live shows lately, and a couple shorts, but I'm going to try to get some content back on there. I've got a bunch of stuff that needs to be edited and uploaded. Just time hasn't been very friendly right now. Keep an eye out. I'll let you guys know when I get the store open for the shirts. And you guys, I don't know, Mike and John, I don't know if you guys heard from previous shows, and Kenny, you guys drop me an email with your shirt size. I'm going to give, because you guys are at almost every live show. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys a free shirt just for being here, tuning in. Ryan, I still need to get your information. And anybody else that has been on a bunch of the live shows, I know who you are. Go ahead and shoot me an email, and I'll hook you guys up. And then for further stuff, it'll all be on the in the store So look for that to be happening pretty soon. And I think that's all I got for tonight. So have a good week, and I'll see you all next week. Get this music queued up, and you all have a good week. See ya.